We all know the Marvel movies take place in the same universe. The characters interact, there are giant crossover movies, it's obvious. But some people think Pixar movies take place in the same universe, too. The so-called Pixar theory has to be updated with every new movie, making a convoluted timeline explaining how the toys in Toy Story lead naturally to the cars in Cars. But I've got a way bigger theory, which is just gonna blow your mind. Happy April Fool's Day, by the way. Okay, this is crazy, but just hear me out. We all know the famous story of little boy Georgie Washington chopping down the cherry tree. He admitted to his mischief and got off the hook. You've probably seen this painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. He and his force got the drop on German mercenaries for the British, who were celebrating Christmas when they attacked. Now I know what you're thinking. Ted, why are you bringing up these totally unrelated stories? Well, dear listener, it is my humble and immeasurably groundbreaking theory that little Georgie and George Washington are the same character. I know, pick your jaw off the floor. Sure, the kid in the cherry tree story is honest and innocent, while the general who crossed the Delaware obviously had the grim cojones for a Christmas surprise attack, but both of these stories take place in a setting called America. What are the chances of that? And that's not the end. There's another war story which is clearly related. During the uncleverly named Great War, European soldiers played a game called soccer or football, depending on the translation you're reading, with rival soldiers from, again, Germany, on, again, Christmas. All these stories clearly take place in the same universe. But I mean it about those translations. The same story might sound totally different depending on where the person telling it first heard it. There are lots of stories about a war between America and itself. It figures such shoddy writing involves clone soap drama, and people can't even decide if it's called the Civil War or the War of Northern Aggression. The fandoms for these stories are so dedicated that they're still debating the canon and writing new fanfiction in America's shared universe. We even make donut steel original characters based on the originals. Okay, so the joke's over. Of course all these stories take place in the same universe. It's our universe. And yet, just like the Pixar theory and even the Marvel movies, the parts don't always line up. Lots of people interpret modern events, and the Civil War for that matter, in a variety of ways. Different people have no choice but to see the world from different perspectives. Maybe that's why we like sharing fictional universes nowadays. I'll never be able to live through the Civil War from everyone's perspective, but I could watch every Marvel movie, and then I'd have the same experience as anyone else. Not including the decades of comics and TV shows, but there's a single canonical authoritative source which any person could reasonably consume. And you don't need to consume all of it. I haven't seen every Marvel movie, but I can still talk out my little squiddy sphincter about the franchise as a whole. And for the movies I haven't seen, I can just ask a friend who has, or Google the Wikipedia article. I hope you see where I'm going with this. I've been watching The Story of God with Morgan Freeman on Netflix. As an atheist who's super pretentious about it, in the opposite way you might expect an atheist to be super pretentious about it, I love this show. It's cool to see how cultures across the globe have looked at our universe and taken lessons. Sometimes similar ones, sometimes very different ones. But if you've got multiple holy books featuring the omnipresent oneness of reality or whatever, then even if those books don't agree about what that omnipresent oneness is like or wants for us, you've got a shared universe of texts with at least one overlapping character. If you want to understand the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you don't need to watch every Marvel movie. If you want to understand God, you don't need to read every holy book ever printed. Even if you've chosen a particular holy book, you apparently don't need to read the whole thing.
It doesn't take 7,000 words for you to believe the Bible. It only takes 10 words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
I think the story of God is a little too deep for me to linger over for long. I need to piggyback on a story which has already offended religious groups. Good Omens is a novel jointly written by Neil Gaiman and the late great Terry Pratchett, made into a miniseries on Amazon Prime. In it, there's a nice and accurate book of prophecies which totally come true. The writer Agnes Nutter was so good at making predictions, she wrote it so whenever anyone opened the book, they'd open to something immediately relevant. And as soon as the book's prophecies have resolved, there's not a copy to be found. The book served its purpose and disappeared. There is a sequel, though, with prophecies about the world to come. Now, Agnes Nutter was burned for witchcraft. She saw it coming. But her book helps an angel and a demon prevent the apocalypse. They make sure the Antichrist tells Satan to go to hell. God himself never appears, and never seems to lend a hand. Why'd he leave the earth in the hands of these bumblers? Well, if he had shown up, there'd have been no free will left for anyone else. His omnipotence would have dominated the narrative. If he didn't immediately resolve the apocalypse, the audience would just be skeptical why. Leaving him out of the narrative lets the other characters enact his plan, which makes for a much better TV show. But if God is omnipresent, then he actually did show up in Good Omens. He was in every scene. He was in Agnes Nutter's Book of Prophecies. He is in every book. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. If you really believe God is everywhere, then you'd better be able to find him anywhere. The whole universe should act like the nice and accurate predictions of Agnes Nutter. Whenever you open your eyes, whatever you see had better be immediately faith-affirming. If not, then I guess your God isn't the big one. Or maybe your eyes aren't as open as you thought they were. In the same way, there are Marvel movies and Pixar movies people tend not to like. But the moment you decide, there's no need to find a place for the bug's life in the Pixar theory, no one cares what bugs are doing, you've discarded the Pixar theory. A Marvel movie marathon without Thor: The Dark World isn't a Marvel movie marathon. And if you try to edit a single word out of history, you're not a historian, you're a fan fiction writer. But historical fan fiction is just another contribution to history. We can't escape this universe we share. I'm thinking too much again. It's all I do here at Thinkster. I submitted my application to that internship in Japan. If I get to work at Okinawa, cool. But if I don't, life goes on. It is what it is what it is. Do you think the Pixar theory is true? If you don't think it's true, do you think it's at least fun to think about? Let me know in the comments. Bye-bye.